this is WhyBeAre, and today we're going to be taking a look at Sega Genesis Minis. This is the American version. This is the Japanese version. This is the special Mega CD 32X add-on that was only available in Japan. And these unmarked 3 white boxes are the most interesting thing. These are the special bits you get when you get the collector's edition, which was also only available in Japan. This is fragile. We are not going to yeet this one off of the table. Starting with the largest box, inside of this we have a frame. This is why I said it was fragile, because I didn't want to damage this frame. So it has the Mega Drive logo on it, and you can tell it's special because it says collector's edition on it. And then we have all these blank spaces that we need to fill up. To do that, we're going to need the next box. Inside of this box, we have a bunch of miniature Sega Mega Drive cartridges. One of the things you'll notice is that all the artwork used is the Japanese artwork. So for example, up here we have Sonic the Hedgehog 2. That's what it looked like in Japan. And that's what it looked like in the USA. We also have Golden Axe up here. That's what it looked like in Japan. And that is what it looked like in the USA. Now, thankfully, most of these games do have their titles written in English as well as Japanese, but there are some exceptions. For example, Yu Yu Hakusho is only in Japanese text. Then you have the game like Party Quiz Mega Q, which has the words Mega Q in English, but Party Quiz is nowhere on there in English. Thankfully, though, for the most part, I recognize a bunch of these games. There are some games in here that are Japan exclusive games that I know very, very little about, but seeing them like this, it makes me want to go and try them out and see if I can enjoy the game without knowing any Japanese. So let's go ahead and free the games from their plastic containers and take a closer look at a cartridge so you can see what one of the cartridges look like. I think the game we'll do this with is Sonic the Hedgehog 2 because that's a pretty iconic game for the Sega Genesis library. Now, unfortunately, I do not have any Sega Mega Drive games. I do have Sega Genesis games, but they use a different cartridge shape. So I had to go online and look at pictures to see just how good of a recreation this is. And overall, I would say it's a pretty good recreation. For example, you notice how it has all those bumps on the right side, and then the left side looks like it's missing some bumps? It's not actually missing anything because that's how the original Mega Drive games were. The sticker on it goes from the front over to the top, and then on the back, we have the words all in Japanese, and then in English, it says Made in China. For some reason, that's just really funny to me. It's all Japanese on the back, except for the words Made in China. Also, you'll notice that there is the Sega logo right here, and it is a bump. You can feel the bump of the Sega. And on the underside of it, there is a strip down there that would simulate the pins that actually make contact with the Sega Genesis, or in this case, Sega Mega Drive console. So I am pretty happy how the cartridges look. Now let's go ahead and open up the final box, which is definitely the least interesting of the boxes. This one just has some mounting hardware for the frame. So we have two options here, really. We have a little stand we could put the frame on that sits on a desk, or we have a rope we can use to mount it on a wall. But we still need to get the games into the frame. How do you do that? Well, there are some instructions in Japanese. Thankfully, there are pictures, and I think the pictures are enough for me to get this thing open and get the games inside of it. Step 1 says we need to remove the back. I guess we need to get to the back then, so let's get everything else out of the way so I got lots of room to work with this thing because I don't want to accidentally break it. There, a whole clear table makes it nice and easy to get access to the back of the frame. And to get access to the back, I guess we just got to rotate all of these little pins. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 of them. It's an odd number. I did not expect that. Totally random, but I did not expect that. Now, to get this out, I don't got fingernails, so I just got to flip it over off camera, and that went fine. Okay, I got the backing off. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the instructions again. The instructions say you put cartridges into the foam, and then you put the backing back on so you don't mess with the backing anymore. All right, time to place the cartridges. What order are we going to do it? Mystery order. We're just going to stick it in whatever order they end up being. I'm literally just grabbing them from the pile of cartridges I have and not looking. So it's a surprise. Like, I don't think there's any specific order they're supposed to be in. I don't really know because, to be honest, the first time I opened this up before I made the video, I opened the cartridges up upside down and they were just spewed everywhere. So if they were in some specific order, yeah, I didn't actually get to see it, unfortunately, which kind of sucks. So if any of you out there do know, like, oh, they were in this order originally, feel free to tell me. I tried to match them up with close to where they were originally, but I just don't know how accurate it was. Yeah, that's the thing. When I do an unboxing video, I try to actually open everything up, know exactly what's in there, so I can say inside of this is this while I'm opening it up. So I'm not like, hey, what's this thing? I don't know, let's open it up. No, I'm opening it up. I know what it is. So there, all the cartridges are in, and now we go ahead and put the backing back, and somehow, just right now, there's like a little chip on it. I don't know what that's even from. I don't think I did that, but let's see. If we put that on the inside, well, it's on the back. Nobody's going to see it anyways, right? So put that on, and go ahead and lock everything back into place, and then we should be done. Nice and easy. I just got to find a place to put it now. Flip it on over, and here is what it looks like. That's pretty nice. Although I can very clearly see all the fingerprints I left. Thankfully, I don't think I got any on the inside of the frame, but there are a bunch on the outside. So let's just wipe this down real quickly. And now it's looking pretty. So let's give you guys a second to really get to admire it. I think it looks nice. Wait, I see a fingerprint. Now we admire it. Except the lights are reflecting too much and you can kind of see the reflections. Oh, well, you get an idea of what it looks like. Now we need to go ahead and put it on the stand on the desk to see what that looks like. The stand is very complicated to use, so watch closely. First, you put it on your desk. Then, separate the legs. Did you miss that? Too bad. I'm not repeating it. Next, you put the display on the stand like so. And that's what it would look like. Although I did notice something immediately after putting this stand together, it's not very strong. If I put just a little weight on the top of this thing, you see it collapses. And if I extend it all the way out, it doesn't even hold all the way. You notice it shifted just a little bit, like it's fully opened and then it shifts a little bit. It doesn't have any sort of locking mechanism, which is kind of unfortunate. And the amount of pressure you need is really small. Like I am barely pushing on this thing and I am not that strong. Thankfully, though, it doesn't really matter to me because I have no room to have something like this sitting on a desk, but I do have room on a wall where I can go ahead and place it. And I even have a pretty good idea of where that's going to be. So I'll be using this rope off camera to get it where I want it to go. But that covers the contents of the special collector's edition. Now we're going to go to some of the more pedestrian versions after I get this one out of the way. And the next one we have is still pretty interesting. This is the Mega Drive Tower Mini Mega CD Super 32X Lock-On Cartridge Mega Drive Cartridge. And that is literally the full title that is both there on the front and on the top. They were really dedicated to having a ridiculously long title. First question I have is, which is bigger, this box or the collector's edition display? The answer is the display is a bit larger, and actually I should have given you guys some measurements on this thing, so let me try to estimate it out real quickly. So that's about 12 inches, and then this is about 16 inches. It's really useful if you know the length of various body parts, then you could estimate lengths pretty well. Like I would say with 99.9% confidence, this display is within 1 inch of 12 by 16. Anyways though, let's get back to the Mega Drive Tower Mini Mega CD Super 32X Lock-On Cartridge Mega Drive Cartridge and see what's inside of it. And since this box actually has a design on it, I'll go ahead and give you guys a look at every side of the box. So that's the front. Here's the side. Here's the back. Here's the other side. Here's the top. And then here is the bottom. I had to make sure I flipped that perfectly so it was always right side up. Wasn't the easiest thing to do. With this package, you get everything that you see right before you. So you get the Sega CD, the Sega 32X, a little Sonic game, just like the ones we saw in the collector's edition, and then also a Sonic and Knuckles cartridge as well. But in addition to that, there's also a hidden envelope, which has some really interesting stuff in there, which we'll be taking a look at later on. But first, let's go ahead and assemble a little tower of power. Every tower needs a good base, and we got one. This is the Sega CD Mini. Now, unfortunately, this is not the same Sega CD that I own in real life. I own the top-loading one, so it's much, much larger, and I wish this was the one I had in real life, but the other ones seem to be cheaper, and I think they're a little bit more reliable because you don't have to worry about having a moving disc tray in addition to the disc reader itself. And then onto this, we need to put a Sega Genesis Mini. This is the one I'll be unboxing later on, so I'll have to box it back up, but don't worry about that. We got a Mini, and now we need to connect it. Neat thing about that is there's this little panel that pops off to allow it to connect. just like a real Sega Genesis. The real ones have that little panel, you pop it off, and then it'll slot on just like so onto the Sega CD. Next up, we have the 32X, which just goes in like that. On a real 32X, you'd also have like this extra piece that could be used for spacing to allow it to connect to a Genesis 1 or Genesis 2. This one doesn't have that. Kind of goes in like that, and that's it. It also doesn't lock in like a real one. A real one, it'll click in and it'll lock in where I feel almost confident lifting up the whole console just by the 32X. Next up, we have some cartridges. So this first cartridge, although you really can't read it, this one, I believe it says Sonic and Knuckles. I'm not good at Japanese, but there is a Sonic and Knuckles on it. It's just really small. And then inside of that, you can put Sonic. And then boom, you now have the full Tower of Power. It's a beautiful thing. The main problem is, where in the world do you put this? You know, they had this exact same problem when the original Genesis came out, and they still do not have a good solution for that. I don't know where to put this little piece. I wish it just had like a little flap somewhere where you could whoop, stick it in and it's safe so you don't lose it. I guarantee you, I am going to lose this little piece in... It's gone. I lost it. It's gone now. Anyways, that is the fancy tower itself. Now let's go ahead and take a look at that envelope I was mentioning earlier, which I didn't even know was included with the mini tower when I bought it. It was just a nice little surprise that was hiding in the box. So inside of this, we have two things. We have a little book, which we'll be taking a closer look at in a second. But first, I want to open up the poster. So this is a pretty cool poster. It just has all kinds of diagrams about the Sega Genesis. And it even has a little section down here for the CD and the 32X as well. And then two more, which I actually am not sure what that is. And then inside of the book, which includes additional diagrams very similar to the one you see on the poster. My only major complaint about this is that it only includes diagrams for the models that are included in the mini packages. So that means for the Genesis, there are only diagrams for Genesis 1. There's nothing for the Genesis 2 or 3. They pretend like those basically do not exist. Same goes for the CD. Kind of interestingly, they only have the first generation of the Genesis, but for the CD, they only have the second generation. So it's just the ones that are included in the package, and I really, really wish it just had everything. Like they would just go all out and say, look, here's the stuff for the original Genesis, here's the stuff for the 2, here's the 3, here's the stuff for the CD1 and the CD2. Like this is the really, really cool stuff. You can't get any better than this. But with this one, you just feel like, man, there's some more they could have put into it, and I really, really wish they did. So now we're moving to the pictures from the Super 32X. And this one doesn't have quite as many pictures as the other ones, but it's also not as complex of a piece of hardware. And now we go to the final one, which is for the Sonic and Knuckles cartridge. And now that I think about it, the thing I couldn't identify on the poster is probably for the Sonic and Knuckles cartridge. And there's the final page, which has some music. So not only do I need to learn Japanese to really understand what was going on with all this, I also need to learn to read music so I can play this song for you guys. Yeah, that's never going to happen. I'll try learning Japanese before I learn music. And learning Japanese is going to take years and years and years, so I don't think I'll ever learn music. Anyways, that is the entire contents of the little book. There's also another side to this poster as well. I wanted to show that to you after we looked at the book, though, because the book really relates to that side of the poster. On this side of the poster, we just have like a history of the console, so it tells you all the games and when they came out. And it starts at 1988 and goes all the way up to 1996, and then it jumps to 2019, where it says the Mini was released. And again, boy, do I wish I could read Japanese, because this whole thing would be amazing if I could. It's my own fault, though. Who's the guy who imported stuff from Japan that's going to be completely in Japanese without knowing Japanese? This guy. That's going to do it for the Mega Drive Tower Mini Mega CD Super 32X Lock-On Cartridge Mega Drive cartridge. Next up, we have the regular Japanese version of the Mega Drive. And the packaging on this is very, very similar to the original packaging used in Japan. And one thing I like is that they kept that similar look when they made the Mega Drive Tower Mini box. See, I'm abbreviating it this time, but they have a very similar aesthetic and they go along pretty well. Although, to be honest, I almost wish this transparent plastic wasn't here and it was just that grid, because that grid looks nice. Like, it's retro and it just fits the product so well. I want more grid, less plastic. Plus plastic kills turtles and stuff. That's bad. Anyways, let's go ahead and see what's in this box. Once again, since this package has a design on it, I'll show you every side of the box. There's the front, there's the top, there's the back, which includes a list of games that are included, all in Japanese, of course. There's the bottom, there's the side, there's the other side. Now, let's go ahead and open this up. One thing worth mentioning is the box design in the American and Japanese version is slightly different. We're going to start off with the controllers. And there's another difference between the American and Japanese version here. The Japanese version comes with 6-button controllers. The American version comes with the 3-button controllers. And it's not like you can't get 6-button controllers in America. I have some just sitting on a shelf. It's just the controllers they decided to include. I guess maybe in America the 3-button controllers are more iconic, but in Japan, maybe the 6-button ones were. Or maybe some of the games in the Japanese version require the 6-button controller and none of the ones in the American version do. I mean, the ones in the American version better not require the 6-button controller, otherwise that was a huge mistake by Sega. So let's get these controllers out of the way. Moving on to the console itself, it's in its own little box. And you'll notice this console actually says Mega Drive on it. The one I was using before, it said Genesis on it. So if you want the true Tower of Power, this is the console to use. And once we open up the American version, I'll give you a closer comparison between the two. Lastly, we have some cables in the box. So you have an HDMI cable, but as far as I can tell, this is just a generic HDMI cable. It's no different than any other one you can buy. But the USB cable does have the word Sega on it. So I want to make sure you guys get to see that, because I think it's interesting to know if a cable is one that's straight off the shelf or if it's one specifically made for the product. This one is at least specifically made for Sega, but if you look at the HDMI one, there is no Sega markings on it whatsoever. It just says HDMI, which is what an HDMI cable should say. And then we got one final thing in the box, which you can't even see because of the shadows. It is the instructions in Japanese. I'm not even going to open that. I assume the instructions will be the same in Japanese as they are in English. So that covers everything with the Japanese Mega Drive. I almost called it a Genesis. Speaking of Genesis, we should go ahead and take a look at that one now. Once again, I'll show you guys every side of the box. That is the front. That's the top. That's the back. Kind of interestingly, on this one, it just has the pictures of the games, where on the Japanese one, it has the picture of the game and the title directly below it. Moving on to the bottom, which has some text you probably can't read because it's way too small. Here's side 1, and then here is side 2. Now I want to do a little comparison between the American box and the Japanese box. You'll see the Japanese one is a little bit smaller. That's because the American one comes with one of the wall plugs for the USB, and the Japanese one does not include that. Also, I like that even though the designs of the boxes are pretty much completely different, they still kind of relate to each other, because on the American one, you have a black background with a white grid. This one's kind of like the inverted version of that. So white background with the black grid. I guess technically it'd be the other way around because this one probably came first. But point is, I just like the fact that they can relate like that, even though the overall design of the box is pretty significantly different. Now let's go ahead and get this box opened up. Opens up pretty much the same as the other one, but it has some interesting folds. Like this piece right here folds in between two other pieces of cardboard. And then on this one right here, it folds open to reveal the wall charger, which, yeah, I really don't need these. I have so many of these, I just throw it in a tub with all the other ones. Although maybe this one I'll throw it in this box since I'm going to keep the box around, and then it just is always with it, but I don't need this, and it doesn't even look like it's branded by Sega anywhere on it. So it's just a generic wall plug, which I have no use for. Now, for the controllers, these ones are the 3-button one. And I think the 3-button ones are actually kind of ironically a little bit larger than the 6-button ones. Let's see if that's true. Putting them side by side, yeah. We Americans have big, fat, meaty hands that need big, fat controllers. That's surely why they said put the 3-button one in the US and the 6-button one in Japan. Because Japanese, they can handle the small controller, no problem. America got fat fingers. We play like this. I can't even hit one button at a time because fingers are too fat. I don't know where I'm going with that. But we got 2 of those controllers. Aesthetically, I do like the red text on these controllers. It looks nice with the red text, but the design of this one is so much better in your hand. If you hold them both like this one compared to this one just feels big. It kind of reminds me of like the original Xbox giant controller it used to have. Except back then I was a child and my hands were even smaller, so that thing just felt like an absolute monster. So we also have a USB cable that appears to be identical to the one in the Japanese one, has the same Sega branding, and then HDMI cable also appears to be the same as the other one. Now, let's go ahead and take a look at the console itself. Pretty much the same packaging as before. It has its own little box, and then inside of it, we have the Genesis. And we can go ahead and take this Genesis and put it right next to a Mega Drive so you can see the difference between the two units. The difference is in the finishing touches. Basically, any text or logos applied to the unit is different. And one thing I want to point out, if you're a video game collector, you'll know that if you want to buy a Sega Genesis, you want the ones that look exactly like this. Because there are some of them that don't say high definition graphics. You don't want those ones. The best units look exactly like this. I don't know if there's anything similar for the Japanese unit, but there very well could be. And lastly, we have the instruction manual, which is much thicker than the Japanese one. It must be because me American, me dumb, me need things spelt out for me. No, actually, it's just because this has multiple languages, and this one just has Japanese. So that is going to do it for the unboxing section of this video. And now, just for fun, babies, meet daddy. So how close is the Mini compared to an original Sega Genesis? The text up top that says high definition graphic, that's about the same between the two. The text that says Sega Genesis, though, is a little bit different. On the original, it has a little R in a circle for a registered trademark, where the Mini doesn't have that. The 16-bit logo, pretty much the same. And then this is surprising. The power on section is a different shade of red. I looked up pictures of other American Genesises because I was wondering maybe mine got discolored, but no, this appears to be about the correct color. And this one's just a different shade. I think what they did is they used the exact same shade in the Japanese and the American one in the Minis, but in the full-size ones, they might have used two different shades of red, and that's why this one slightly is discolored from an original. Other details, though, they stand out pretty well. Like, how many little slats are there? 19. How many are here? 19. How many little dots on the reset button? 14. Also 14. Both of the sliders slide up and down, just as you would expect. They both have on and off switches that make a little clicking noise when you click them. This reset button doesn't make a real clicking noise, just kind of smushes like a membrane keyboard. This one, it actually makes a click. And I don't know if I really should compare the rest of it, but what the heck, why not? I just gotta pull this thing off of the real Sega CD, the real big one. And then let's take a look at these two. Now, I don't have the little case on this thing. Remember what I mentioned earlier about how you're gonna just lose that? Well, I found it for a while, now it's gone again. And let's see, how similar are they? I went looking for this missing piece. I could not find it. I really wish I had it for this comparison, but I have no idea where it is. So we can compare everything else about the units but that. So for the feet, the design is pretty much the same. Screwdriver holes in the exact same spot. They both have this grill, although the one on the Mini is fake. This one's an actual hole that you can see through. This one is just kind of indentations. The stickers are pretty similar, but they are a little bit different if you look at them closely. And they both have this weird little bump. I don't know exactly what the purpose of that bump is, but they both have it. And then one thing I actually think is really impressive is the similarities on this edge right here. Like, this is kind of hard to see, but the way the bumps are on the connecting piece between the two is so similar. Aside from the fact that this one doesn't have a real connector on it, they do look identical, which is really impressive because that's going to be hidden. And how many people are actually going to remove that and then compare it to a real Genesis? Probably not that many. So I really like the fact that they got those two to look so similar. Now, how about we go on to the front of the unit? And I would say they are as close as they can be because this one uses actual Sega controller connectors and this one uses USB for the controllers. One thing I like, though, is on the Genesis original, it says Control 1 and Control 2. The Mini says that as well, even though nowadays you would usually say Controller 1 and Controller 2. Well, actually, you might have said that back then, too, and Sega was just being weird. I don't really know. But yeah, it says Control 1 and Control 2 instead of Controller 1 and Controller 2, which gives it a little bit of charm to me. On the original, we also have a headphone output jack. This one has a little indentation for it, but doesn't actually have the output. And then onto the rear, everything is different. The Mini has a HDMI and a micro USB plug for power. This one has a, I don't know if it's proprietary, but it is special to Sega video connector, and then it uses a barrel plug. And then it also has additional plugs to plug in the 32X and the CD and all those extra additions you may want. Speaking of 32X and all those extra additions, how about we go ahead and compare those guys now? So let's get these guys out the way, and I'll be right back. Unfortunately, this is based on a Japanese 32X, and this is an American 32X. So the stickers are going to be different, but I believe the overall shape is identical between the two versions. So we can go ahead and compare them in shapes, but not in the stickers. And looking from the top, my goodness, is it spot on. They have the exact same shape. Going to the side, again, it's pretty much spot on. I don't notice any differences. On the back, it has a little bump where the plugs would normally be, but this one actually has plugs where you would plug everything in. And then onto the bottoms are surprisingly similar. Like, it even has the little contact points on the Mini. That's one of those things you did not expect to see, is having the little silver contact points just like there is on the original. It is so surprisingly similar. And I think, honestly, the details that went into the 32X is more impressive than the details that went into the Genesis. They're both pretty good. But man, the 32X one is just really, really good. And again, unfortunately, my Sega CD does not look like this one. My Sega CD looks like this. So we can't do a comparison there. Kind of unfortunate, but nothing I can do about it besides going out and buying one, but it's a bit too late for that now. It's like midnight as I'm recording this video, so yeah, I don't know where you can get a 32X on demand at midnight. I don't think that's going to be found. But you can take a nice close look at it at least. There's all the stuff on the front. Here's the top. Kind of hairy. My dog got on this somehow. He's not even in the room. He gets hair everywhere, man. Then on the side, this will show it to you upright. And then onto the other side. There's that side. And there's the bottom. Again, I wish I could compare it, but I can't. I just noticed this piece is it supposed to do that? Or is this broken? Like, there's this little plastic piece that's kind of like free out. Yeah, I think that's broken. That's unfortunate. I don't know how that happened. Well, hopefully when I put a console on it, I won't be able to notice that. Anyways, though, I think that's going to do it for this video. I know I didn't actually turn on the consoles at all because just kind of like a look at what you get in the collector's edition, and then a look at the Mega Drive Tower Mini. And then also, I figure I have the consoles. We can do a quick look at those ones as well. And if you guys are interested, I could do a full-on video in the future that actually shows off the gameplay and stuff for those. If you'd be interested in seeing that, do leave a comment so I know. Otherwise, that's going to do it for this video. Till next time, it's WhyBeAre. Remember, if you like or dislike this video, I will know. I can tell by tracking how many days it takes for my shipment to get from Japan to here so I can make this video. So do the right thing, and I'll see you next time. One small correction. I was setting everything up so it's nice and pretty for the end slate, and I noticed something interesting. If you take the Mega Drive game and try to put it into the Genesis, it does not fit. If you put it into the Mega Drive, it fits fine. So the mold on the two systems is different, because if you look at the slot opening for the cartridge, you'll see the shape of the Genesis is a little more compact than the one used on the Mega Drive. So I just wanted to make that quick correction, and I'm going to go ahead and finish setting this up so it looks nice and pretty for the end of the video. Also, here's something funny. All right, this fits only in Mega Drive, but the little Sonic and Knuckles, yeah, that fits there. It has a different cartridge shape. This shape is the American cartridge shape, so it sits in there fine. And then it even fits in here. Like, okay, just, yeah, whatever. So, I got to figure out, how to make this look pretty for the final. And, yeah. I just had to put that correction in there because it's going to drive me crazy knowing that I lied.